Real quick, I wanted to kind of touch on something here. So I got my first copyright claim, not a strike, but a claim from a production studio, and they were within their rights to do so. The problem that really bothered me was this video on its original upload, through all the problems and changes that this Epson 2150 went through, was there was a lot of great community support that just ended up getting lost because of that, and I hate that because there are things in the video that are mentioned that are different now. One thing would be that I have a USB footage of aquarium footage that I usually stream up there, just random aquarium footage, and somebody had said, well, I can't stream off my USB, and I realized after doing a firmware update, neither could I. It stopped recognizing anything that wasn't like a JPEG format, which is a little disappointing, but also one of the weak points for Epson in general. They have problems with keeping things like that pretty consistent. The whole point of this introduction to this video is the fact that this video was originally over a year old, so it's an older video where I cover a lot of things, and some of the things may be different. The hurtful thing about what happened was that all that great community support between everybody commenting on it and teaching people things and tricks that they've learned with it, all that's gone. All the answered questions are gone, and that's unfortunate. I've gone back through and I call this, you know, playfully my director's cut edition. I've gone through and kind of blurred out things that might risk it being gone again in the future. And down below, if you guys have any questions or comments, be sure and leave them. And we'll do our best to try to get them answered and help you out with if this is something that you've been interested in. Now, also at this point, this projector is soon probably on the chopping block for discontinuation as they move into something else. Projectors typically hit end of life a couple years after their release for the next variant or variation of that projector coming out. So a little bit of this is probably going to be outdated information, and it does hurt that a lot of that great community support from the artist community that wanted to know about it as an art projector, from business community, from people that wanted it as a home theater projector, much like I use it here in this very hot garage. Anyways, there's definitely some differences that have happened, so feel free to ask down below. I re-uploaded this with the new end, so at the end you'll see me and I'll do different lighting sources because this little theater setup is actually in a garage, so the garage door is open with full daylight coming in, windows behind me, which you can see right there. Let light in. We've got lights overhead, lights on this bar set up, lights all around, and it does a really good job. I'm still super impressed with it, and I love it. I love coming out here and turning on the baseball game. It is one of my favorite projectors. And anyways, guys, I hope the video is somewhat helpful. I know some of it's going to be a little bit out of date. Some changes took place which nullify some of the information inside the video. But again, if you have questions, leave them down below. I'll do my best to get back with you. Let's roll into the original video from over a year ago, and hopefully it can still help some people. Man, I'm at 7 minutes already. I hope I'm in focus. Is that all I wanted to say about that? Now, my first impressions was unboxing. The box is nothing spectacular. I didn't actually shoot footage of it. I did, but I formatted it on accident. Sorry. But it's really just a brown box, says Epson 2150. Inside, you get the projector itself, you get the AC power cable, you get two AA batteries. Maybe they're AAA. I'll have to double check. I think they're AA. Two AA batteries and the remote itself. That's it. Well, you get some quick launch stuff too, though. It doesn't really tell you much about what the projector can do. If you want that information, you have to go online and download the two packets they have for business and for home theater use. Wasn't a super impressive unboxing experience. Real quick, before we go too far, let's take a break here. This is one of my favorite parts. I like just taking shots of the actual hardware itself and then showing it in a video. I'll put some surface specification cards on there so you can see that as well as the video rolls through just shots of the projector. If you don't like that part, skip ahead a little bit, skip it, and we'll start talking about some other things. Anyways, check this out, and if you don't want to watch it, skip it. So the first thing I did when I got it out of the box was my super scientific, didn't have my lab coat or glasses on, science test of just let me see if I can set it down and get an image to 110 inches on my Elite screen that I wanted to do. This was part of the unboxing B-roll that got formatted, but I took it out of the box, I set it up, and within under 60 seconds, and that includes power up time of the projector, I was able to get an image onto the screen and line it up fairly well and be extremely happy with what I was seeing right away. It was that easy. It's a lot easier than that PF1000U when Laura likes to walk through and knock it and turn it, and I got to sit down for like 20 minutes and readjust the screen on the wall. That's annoying. This was not. This was a super easy setup. While this projector is just as much a home theater projector, it is also just as much a business projector, and there is a manual that's this big for business and this big for home theater features with a little bit of meat in the middle. Things like connecting it to the network so you can do multi-panel displays. That's pretty neat, but not something that I'm interested in from the aspect of our review for it. I'm not so much interested in how many devices can be networked with it. I do think it's cool that it supports Miracast for Android devices that also support Miracast, and if you like that kind of thing, it can do that here. So let's talk about some gaming testing really quick. Now, here's some of the different settings and how they can affect you. If you like high interpolation, then you're going to have issues some with latency. If we put it on dynamic, which sets it at about a moderate interpolation speed, then you'll see that we have some of an extra added delay that isn't optimal for gaming. While it looks beautiful, it does have that extra delay that you may or may not like. Now, even in dynamic mode or with interpolation at moderate or high, it's not an unplayable experience, but you add a lot to your timing latency, and if that's important to you, don't do it. Put it on natural, turn off interpolation, and then you have a much quicker, almost instantaneous feel experience when you're playing games. Let's break down some of the technical specs, some of the hardware on the back, some of the inputs, some of the things that you may be interested in knowing, and this is a little bit where the Epson 2150 was somewhat on the lackluster side to me. It does have two HDMIs. HDMI 1 is also MHL, which is mobile high definition link. That's pretty cool if you want to plug things like phones or tablets, what have you, into that one. It'll be able to do that and stream it well from the phone or tablet device, whatever you plug into it. HDMI 2 is a standard HDMI format. Nothing fancy there about that whatsoever. It does have one USB. I do wish there were two USBs because then you could have two different HDMI devices plugged in and powered by said USBs, but not enough power reaches that one USB, and Epson will tell you that. They recommend just one device can be plugged into that takes not a substantial amount of power from the actual projector itself, and not to try splitting it. Despite the fact they said not to try splitting it, I did anyways. I took a little USB splitter here that takes one, converts it to two, and I tried unsuccessfully, as they said, so I wasn't upset about it. I was trying to see if I could have both a Roku or a Fire TV stick plugged into it so I could swap between the two. But if the projector's on, they both need power. Eventually the Fire Stick would just turn off and go to a reset mode. Oh well. They said that you couldn't do it. I tried it anyways. I can confirm you can't do it. There is an old school VGA connector on the back, and there's a reason why I'm not a fan of that, because I think as technology progresses, as hardware progresses, if people are having to resort to using this, then it's cool that it's there if that's your only option on an old laptop or something, but it's not ideal, especially not ideal over HDMI or things like DisplayPort even, which I don't think we'll see on any projectors in this price range. The reason it's not ideal is because it uses an old 15-pin analog signal. You will suffer quality loss over that analog signal. It's not going to give you the most pretty image that you would hope for, and that can be a problem to me. I figure most people nowadays have ways to connect to HDMI and should go that route, because when you're streaming over VGA, you just get that quality loss, and that undermines the capabilities of the projector, and it just makes me sad. Don't use VGA if you can avoid it. So the only way for sound on this, it doesn't support Bluetooth for sound. It does have an RF Bluetooth sensor for syncing 3D glasses, but it doesn't have Bluetooth for sound. So if you have Bluetooth sound system, it's not going to work out for you very well. It does have a 3.5mm auxiliary jack on the back that you can run to your speaker system. For me, I had to get a 50-foot cable. I ran it up around the cabinets. We'll do more on that later. I'll show you the room later that we've been working on, and that's really your only option, 3.5mm. So this Epson projector uses the Epson 3LCD technology. 3LCD is a subsidiary company that's been around for a while, and Epson pretty much has dibs on anything new that comes from it. There's, of course, Elcos or single-chip DLPs by Texas Instruments, and 3LCD is typically their preferred thing. They do contract out to other companies that make projectors to use 3LCD technology, but when it comes from Epson, you can expect that at that time when this projector released, they had the probably dibs on the best setup for it. It is a nice projection. We'll talk a little bit about how it works, but it's going to be in a nutshell how it works, and if you feel like you want to add to that down below, feel free to. So 3LCD works by splitting between red, green, and blue between three screens, refiltering the image and shooting it out so that you have the most brilliant and beautiful image. It doesn't suffer from things like single-chip DLP, which may suffer from color shifting. One of the problems about refiltering this light and then broadcasting it out is it's not the best for latency. So if you're looking at a little bit of a delay when you're playing games or something, that could be part of the culprit for this. Now, Epson on the 2150 claims 1.07 billion colors. I didn't count them. Good joke, right? That was a good one. And also claims a 60,000 to 1 contrast ratio. We did do a black crush test on it, and I'm gonna tell you, it didn't do super amazing in my opinion. The first really notable black that I could see on the black crush test that you should be seeing here was 5, with 6 being the obvious I can see 6. Now, typically with something 60,000 to 1, you would hope to see something a little closer to 2 or 3 at least being more visible, but they just blend in with the black on the screen. Now, that's pretty standard on most projectors. You'll have adjustable mounting feet, and it's something I've actually seen on pretty much every projector that's come to me. That doesn't mean that I've seen a lot of them, but at least 5 or 6 now that have come to me, where you have adjustable feet on the bottom. You have 2 in the rear that'll give you a slight incremental adjustment, and then you have 1 kickstand foot in the front, which will give you a nice lift. So if you're setting it on a table and you need to use your lens shift within a plus or minus 30 degrees, then you can do that so that you can angle a picture well onto the wall and you have a pretty good setup. So there is a lot with the Wi-Fi and the controllability of that you can go in there and you can connect it to your local network and do things. But a lot of the networkability features are going to be more business oriented, so I'm not going to touch on them a lot, but I will mention that it's really simple to do. If you download the iProjection app, if you log into it and you connect it to your Epson, it's all pretty easy. If you ever set up a smart home device, it's similar to that. And then you can tell the Epson 2150 itself to display a QR code on the screen. Just hold up your phone to it, scan it, it'll connect to your network. Easy as pie. Really cool features about this are more for the business world, like I had just mentioned. Things like you can do little pip screens all over the place. You can have multi-users connected to it, and you can have 4 different screens hooked up to it so that they're all streaming from whatever device or part or whatever they're on that's on the network that's on the screen. Does that make sense? Like Joe over there could do that, or Mike over here could do that, and Laura over there could do that, and they can stream their own panel on the screen. It lets you set up multi-panel users so that multiple people can stream independent video through the projector onto the screen. The number one feature that a lot of people will be interested in, though, as far as connecting it and why it'll be most important, is for things like Miracast. If you use an Android device, you can use Miracast to cast that image from your device using Miracast onto the screen. One last note about the Wi-Fi on the projector itself. It doesn't feature AC, one of the newer standards. It only features 802.11 BGNN for connectivity. Auto iris is cool, but I leave it disabled because I don't like bright to dim to bright to dim. It can go by a frame-by-frame basis, detect the light, and decide if it needs to be brighter or dimmer, brighter or dimmer. And while that's cool, I find it extremely obnoxious and annoying personally. You might like that if that's a feature you were wondering if it has. It does. It's pretty neat, but it's not for me at all. And again, to touch on frame interpolation, if you want to turn your frame interpolation all the way up, then you have issues that I just can't stand. If you've ever watched a video recorded in 60 frames per second, it looks really smooth. To me, I don't like that overly smooth look. I don't like things to look like a soap opera. If you've ever watched a soap opera before, how they just have that look to them. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense. Oh, there is a neat feature I do like, though. If you're watching something and you feel like, hey, the projector screen looks a little bit off, on the remote, you can hit the test pattern button. I like this because in other projectors, usually to do a test pattern or something where you're trying to realign an image, you have to get out of the application. It'll take over. The LG PF1000, the PH450, the Brookstone, they all take over what you're doing instead of just throwing up an image that you can quickly adjust on. Well, you hit the test pattern button, you can realign things within the test pattern. If you need to use keystone, if you need to make any changes to it, if you need to use quick corner, you can do that and then just hit the test pattern button again and go back to the image you're watching. That way you can test pattern, line it up, test pattern button again, turn it off and be like, all right, that looks better, or all right, I need to keep adjusting. I know that's a silly thing to think is really cool, but I like it. Now with my setup, I achieve about 110 inches. Well, not about. I achieve 110 inches on the lead screen that I use, and by doing that, it's about 10 feet 8 inches away. Long live the Imperial system. If you want to know the metrics on that, there's a site called Google. You can go type it in. If it's easier for you to convert, it's 130 inches to make 10 feet 8 inches, roughly-ish. I don't know, that requires math, and I don't do math without Google either. If you're curious about the zoom on the lens, it's a 1.6 times zoom. If you're curious about throw ratio, your throw ratio numbers are 1.33 and 2.16. It does come with a built-in 10-watt mono speaker, and it's probably what you expect. It's really not that good. I've seen really good speakers implemented in some projectors, like the Brookstone Big Shot, but this one is likely what you expect. Not super amazing, not super stellar, not super out there, but it works, and it gets the job done, and it gets loud enough to hear. You're hopefully not going to be just okay with a 10-watt speaker like that on a projector. You're going to plug something into it, I hope. If not, you don't need to. I mean, you can listen on it fine, it's just not great. The Epson 2150 does does feature 3D, which is pretty cool. I like the fact that it's a 3D projector, so if we want to sit down on a nice big screen, 3D is always best enjoyed on a bigger screen, and it has a little RF sensor ability so that you can connect your glasses. This is an Expand brand of glasses. It's not the actual recommended Epson ones, but they work well. They work fine. I don't have problems with ghosting, which would be more of a glasses issue anyways, and we'll do more on these in another video. On your first startup for the projector, Epson actually recommends a 30-minute warm-up period. That's probably one of the longer periods of time I've seen across other projectors I've used. They recommend 30 minutes, give that UHE bulb a chance to warm the lens up, and then make your adjustments, your keystone, your focus, things like that, your zoom. And I can say from my out-of-the-box scientific step, whoops, because I didn't do that. So probably not that big of a deal. Talking about your color modes, you have 4 color modes to choose between. And these 4 color modes are going to be dynamic, bright cinema, natural, and what was the other one? Regular cinema. And what these do are they're essentially the brightest to the least brightest. Bright cinema is kind of that in-betweener where your fan is still going to be loud but not as super loud as dynamic. Dynamic's going to give you the most light and the most color and the most picture, but at the sacrifice of loud blower style fan, because blower style fans are not known for being quiet. That fan goes up to about or above 35 decibels. Pretty loud. But once you put it on natural or cinema, that fan is almost non-existent in sound. It is deathly quiet. Thumbs up for that. Now, if you want different color modes in 3Ds, you're limited to 2 options. You've got essentially the brightest of the bright, which would be 3D dynamic, and it's going to be for bright lit spaces that you need to be able to have more picture for your 3D experience. But on the other hand, the second option is 3D cinema, which, as you can imagine, would be for the least taxing on the projector while in a dark space so that you can enjoy your 3D experience. Say a movie room with no lights or windows on, because you turn on Windows. I guess on a computer you do, unless you're a Linux or a Mac person. As with most big TV brands or projector brands, you have the ability to control things like your tint, contrast, saturation, and sharpness. For some reason, that's really hard for me. I had to write them down so I didn't forget. I would say 3 of them and forget the other one. You have 2 power features, eco and normal. And just remember, if you're on normal, you're going to be taxing it a little bit more. That blower fan's going to be going, and that's where you're going to experience some more sound, and not the sound you want. I guess I should say a few words about the remote. Now, they make this whole big section, the fancy words, and put it together about the remote, and it took me a second of reading it to realize, oh, they're just saying that you can program the remote to be a universal remote as well. The remote is ultimately pretty ugly, but I imagine if they made it too pretty, then it wouldn't be so much of a dual-purpose projector for both business or home theater. You don't really need the remote to be pretty, you just need it to be functional. Having 2 IR receivers on the projector itself make using it in a space pretty easy, because it's either the front or the back, and the IR bounces around. It's going to be pretty easy to use. There have been projectors in the past that didn't do that or implement that quite as well, and it could be a pain to use your remote with it. Really, ultimately, at the end of the day, you want your projector's remote just to be able to do the functions you need it to do in order to use it. I mean, that's a pretty obvious statement, I imagine. This remote is pretty standard, pretty easy to use, and it gets the job done. Ultimately, it's just a beautiful picture. I'll leave you with some shots here at the end of this video. You can kind of come to your own conclusion on what you think about it, and just tell me if you have any comments or feedback. Let me know down below, and I'll be sure and look at other things and be like, oh, that's cool, I never considered that. There's a lot of people that purpose projectors for different reasons that I never even really would have considered until I started posting some videos about it. Now, this is clearly more of a home cinema experience projector, and something that you'll probably want to mount somewhere, leave it there, and when you're having movie night or something, and want the kids to have a sleepover and they want to show off their fancy projector, something that they can just hang out with friends and watch on, and that's pretty cool. Now, you also might be somebody that just likes gaming on the big screen, and again, that's why I tried to cover some of that as well, because it's pretty cool for that also. Anyways, guys, have a great day, night, whatever it is. I'll see you guys in the next video that I do. I got a couple cool things coming up. We're going to be looking at the Nebula capsule. It just finished their campaign on Indiegogo, and that's Anker's new portable omnidirectional sound projector that's like it's supposed to be a pocket projector, but it looks too big for any pockets that aren't Jinko jeans from the 90s. Anyways, get subscribed if you're not subscribed already. Like it if you like it, dislike it if you didn't like it. I'll see you guys in the next video that I do. Have a great day, night, whatever it is.